Unfortunately, by the time she came to Melbourne, where I got a chance to speak to her, it was at the end of her tour, so we saved our conversation until now. It's a rather lengthy interview, but I found her to be a very interesting woman. I read where your record company originally found it very difficult to classify your music, so for that reason they found it very hard to promote you, but it hasn't really harmed you in any way, has it?
No, it hasn't. Well, I think at first they were wary of signing me because I came from the folk scene in New York, and I think so they were a little weird about signing me at first, and they expected the album to sell, I guess, about 30,000 copies, and they would have been really pleased with that, and instead it sold a lot more than that. Yeah, so it hasn't harmed me yet.
No, yeah. Did it make it difficult for you then, originally getting a record contract?
Yeah, it did, but I must say that I wasn't really expecting to get a major record contract to begin with. What I'd had more in mind was, I thought, well, we'll probably get rejected by all the major labels, which did happen. We were rejected by, I think, all of them. And then I thought, well, we'll just go to the next level, down. And I thought, well, we'll probably end up with a record contract with Rounder Records, or one of the smaller labels in America. And what happened instead was that I started to get really good press, which we kept sending to A&M, which was our first choice. And they eventually sent someone from New York down to one of the concerts, and then they started to be interested and kind of circle for a few months. Mm. So on the one hand, yes, it was difficult. On the other hand, it was a lot easier than I'd expected. Mm.
So has it come as a surprise, the enormous amount of success that you've received in the 2 years since you've released your first album?
Well, it is and it isn't. I guess I always felt that something would happen at some point, because I've been writing for a long time, and I think I felt that at some point the music would come out and people would respond to it. I wasn't sure how many people. I'm surprised at the number of people that have responded to it. You know, again, I thought it would be a lot smaller, sort of on a cult level or something like that, or it would take a lot longer. So, yes, I'm surprised, and no, I'm not. You know, I guess I expected that something would happen at some point, but not quite at this magnitude.
What is it about your music that you think people do respond to or do identify with?
I think it's a combination of the lyrics and my voice, which I think doesn't really sound like any voice today. I suppose if it sounds like anybody's voice, it sounds a little bit like Astrid Gilberto's voice from like 1964. Mm-hmm. I mean, I like my songs. I think I write them the best way I can. You know, I think I have a ways to go, but it's hard to tell. I do seem to attract a wide, many different kinds of people in the audience. Everyone from, you know, sort of 4 and 5-year-olds who just like the video, who like the video of Luca,
and the melodies,
like the animation, to, you know, women who are like in their 60s, and sort of men and women from all ages in between.
The songs on the first album, did they come after years of writing that material, or was it something that you especially put together for the release of the record?
It was something I put together for the release of the record. The songs span about 4 years of writing there, from 1980 to 1984. And obviously I'd written other songs that I chose not to put on the first album because I didn't feel that they fit in there. Some of the songs from the second album actually were written before most of the songs on the first album, like Gypsy and Calypso are about each 10 years old.
So was there a pressure then to come up with new material for the second album? Was it?
Yeah, there was some pressure. Well, the thing is, with me, there's always pressure to come up with a new song whenever I finished an old one. But I must say I'm not used to working under a deadline, and there is a sort of perverse streak in me that would prefer to work independently under any circumstances. You know, I guess I wanted to be a singer so that I wouldn't have to work under a boss. You know, and suddenly I found everyone staring at me going, so, you know, are you writing any tunes for the second album? Which, of course, made me feel like, you know, becoming a receptionist again and not even thinking about it.
Especially if you have been writing it and working at your own speed and pleasing yourself, and all of a sudden you've got these other people to sort of work towards.
And to kind of prod you and poke you and ask you how you're doing. And suddenly I felt very offended. You know, I felt like I was some sort of goose in a cage, and everyone was waiting to see if I was going to lay any more eggs. It was, you know, it wasn't quite what I had in mind when I first conceived of the idea of going out and being a singer and a songwriter. And it's still something I have trouble with, but I think in the long run, I'm learning how to speak up and say, well, look, you know, you can't bully me into making another record. You have to give me time, and you have to, you know, if it takes another year, then that's what it'll take. And because I'm not afraid of I don't feel like my time will pass. I don't feel like I'm a trendy thing that we have to jump on this now and capitalize on it. I feel like it's much more interesting in the long run to just give me the time and let me come up with the things that will make a good album and make the right album, as opposed to squeezing songs out so I have something to sell.
You were once studying at the High School of Performing Arts in New York. What was it like in those days, studying at a school like that? It must have been an awful amount of pressure and competitiveness, or is it quite different to what we see on the television in the Fame series?
Well, I've never seen the programs. Still, even after all this time, I still have never seen one of the TV programs, but I did see the movie when it came out. And I found that the movie was actually pretty true to life. As far as the way I experienced it was, everyone, it's an intense age to be going through anyway, those years from 14 to 17, and you tend to feel that life is very melodramatic. And then if you have any artistic temperament or talent, you feel that your life is even more intense and dramatic than everybody else's. So you have a school full of volatile kids, and everyone's very articulate, and everyone's very demanding, and everyone wants to be paid attention to. And when I went back to visit there a few years later, I was struck by how many people were just, on 2 separate occasions I saw kids just sort of bursting into tears. That was the spirit of the school.
Is that a school that you very much wanted to attend, or is it one that your parents encouraged you to attend?
I wanted to attend it all together on my own. I mean, I had been going to a junior high school that was a kind of an experimental school, and there was no real guidance counselor. So I basically called up the School of Performing Arts and said, well, I want to audition. What do I have to do? And they said, well, you get your guidance counselor to help you. And I said, well, I don't have one. So it was all very last minute. I just showed up and they stuck a name on my chest, and I stuck a number on my chest, and I went out to audition, and I felt extremely unprepared. I'd prepared this dance, and there were 20 people on the panel, and I came out, and I recognized one of them who had been a teacher of mine in another school, and I smiled at her, and all 20 people smiled back at me, and I was so flustered by this that I forgot all my steps and improvised, just on the spot. They started the music, I started dancing, I did something or another, and I guess they let it run for about 10 seconds, and then they tear the needle off the record and say thank you very much, and you go back and sit in the corner. It's dramatic,
Daunting.
Yeah, but I got in anyway. At first I thought, oh, they must have realized that I forgot my steps, because you get called back if they're thinking of accepting you. So I thought, oh, they knew I'd made a mistake, and they called me back for that. But actually I'd been called back because I'd been accepted. But it took me a while to really realize that.
Many of your songs approach people in solitary situations, and yet you, when you're on stage yourself, in that solitary situation, seem to be very, very comfortable and composed with the whole situation. How do you feel?
Sometimes I feel very composed, and sometimes I don't feel that way at all. I think it really goes back and forth. I think on stage I'm learning how to project more. I mean, I feel like things have changed so much in the last 2 years. I used to feel very comfortable in small clubs where I could sit on a stool and talk to people, or improvise, or change the set list if I felt like it. Now suddenly I'm on a world tour, and people pay a lot of money to see my concerts, and I'm sort of kind of competing with other forms of entertainment. It's like you could go to see the Eurythmics, or you could go to see Suzanne Vega, and somehow I have to present the kind of entertainment. It's entertainment now, whereas before it was just, fun. It was just what I did. I liked doing it. So sometimes I feel a little self-conscious, and I feel like, well, maybe I don't move around enough. Maybe I don't. I'm not sure what they expect. So I'm finding out where I fit into this.